Hello and welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be talking about Kamen Rider Ghost. About 2 weeks ago I finished watching Kamen Rider Ghost for the second time. I'm not really in touch with what the community thinks of certain seasons, but at least when I watched Kamen Rider Ghost for the first time, it was considered one of the worst seasons. I don't know if tides have turned on that, and I know it always had its fans, but I think for the most part its reputation isn't the best. So today I'll be talking about my opinion on Kamen Rider Ghost and why it's worth a shot. So when I saw Kamen Rider Ghost for the first time, I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was good, but it definitely wasn't bad, and up to that point it was my least favorite season. I just thought it had some cool ideas with the world building, but the characters just weren't that interesting, and I just didn't like some of the weird decisions they made. And I wasn't really a big fan of the suits at that time. I thought the music was good. It just kind of felt like a boring season to me. Although it still had its charm, and I wouldn't call it bad. So after a rewatch, I kind of have the same feelings on the show as I did after my first rewatch. It's not a bad show, but I wouldn't call it good either. Although it still has its moments, and it's charming, and it's not awful. I still think the world building is cool and has good ideas, but it's just not executed the best. The characters are still pretty boring, but I think I understand them a little bit more now. I really like the suits now. I think they're some of the best suits. Now that I've seen all the movies, I understand some of the world building a little bit more. It's still towards the bottom of my seasons, but it's definitely not the worst, especially since I've seen Geo and I don't really like that season, and since Gotchard is the worst season ever, it's certainly not the worst. So first I'm going to talk about the characters, and Takeru is a perfectly serviceable protagonist. I definitely didn't like him the first time I saw this season. I just thought he was kind of annoying and boring, but I ironically liked him because of his stupid prologue at the beginning of every single episode being the exact same. Upon rewatch, he's just fine. He's definitely kind of like a special boy type character, but his personality isn't like that at all. He's definitely more like a Yusuke from Kuga rather than like Hotaro from Gotchard. He's fine, but he's nothing special. I think just my biggest problem with him is that the way his icon works differently than all the other characters isn't really explained, but I think I'll go more into that when I talk about the world building. And just the fact that he dies and comes back multiple times just makes the stakes a lot lower. Even though there was never really any stakes in these type of shows, there's at least the illusion of stakes. So when Takeru comes back from dying on multiple occasions with like a different reason each time, it's just kind of stupid and just loses some of the suspense or tense moments. And as for the other characters, they're alright. Makoto is a fine secondary writer, I guess. He's a villain for a very small amount of time, and after that he's not that interesting. I feel like if we saw more of his relationship with Takeru when they were kids, it would be a lot more interesting, but we don't really get that. And there's just some things with his clone that isn't really explained in the show. Although I will say, Ghost Rebirth Kamen Rider Spectre basically makes Makoto a great character. I won't go into details on that movie, but if you want to know more about Makoto, then you should definitely check out the movie Ghost Rebirth. And for Alan, he's fine. As for like a character that gets redeemed, it definitely feels the most natural because he was just following his father's advice, and all of his family basically betrayed him, so it kind of made sense for him to switch sides. But other than that, after he defects from the Gamma world, he's basically does nothing, but I don't really mind him being redeemed. Akari and Onari are pretty good side characters. Onari can be pretty annoying, but he has some funny moments. And Akari is just a good presence. She has a good relationship with Takeru. And I like that they gave her a nemesis with Igor, so she has something to do with the main plot. And also there are some other side characters, like Onari's two assistants and Makoto's sister, Kanon, but they're not really worth elaborating on. The villains in this season are not that good. Sayonji is the villain for the first 10 episodes, and he doesn't really do anything, and he's probably one of the worst villains in all of Kamen Rider. But he has a connection to Takeru's dad, but that's not really explained until after his death, so Sayonji's a pretty bad villain. And Adele is a pretty bad main villain too, just because I don't really understand why he wants to kill all the humans. If he wants to live in peace in the Gamma world, he can, but I don't know why he wants to kill all the humans. And also the fact that he's really easily talked down 30 to 40 episodes of preparing the Gammizer to destroy humanity. He has like one talk with Takeru that changes his mind, so that's pretty stupid. The Gamma as a whole aren't great villains. I don't really get their motivation for wanting to destroy humans when they can just live in peace in the Gamma world. The world building has good ideas, but just isn't executed that well. Just the idea that the Gamma aren't actually ghosts and they're just people that are being projected is really interesting. It's just never really explained why Takeru's icon works different. He behaves like an actual ghost when all the other Gamma are just people being projected through the icons. That's just kind of confusing. I never really understood that. And also like how Takeru is able to be revived multiple times. The first time he's revived by his dad, which also doesn't really make any sense because it's never really explained how like spirits work in this world. And then the second time he dies, his icon is completely destroyed and then it's just brought back by the power of friendship or something. And then the third time he dies in the movie, and then he's revived by the luminaries, and then the fourth time he's brought back by the Great Eye. So it's just kind of stupid. It's never given any concrete rules on how he works compared to the other ones. And also, just the Gamma in general aren't really explained in the show. I think they might be explained in the All-In specials, but I never saw those, so I don't really know anything about the Gamma or why they're like humans. But also that Adele's father, Adonis, made the icons so that it made a world where people didn't die, and he achieved that. So I don't really understand why Adele wants to invade the human world when he can just live in peace and not die in the Gamma world. Also, the luminaries are a good idea. They're just never really explained either. They're actual ghosts too, like Takeru. But I kind of wish they were just actual characters like what they are in the movie for a brief moment. Just because I feel like that could bring a cool presence to the show, rather than just being power-ups for Takeru. Also, the ghost hunter stuff is pretty interesting, with Takeru's dad being a ghost hunter, but it's never really explained. And speaking of that, it's never really explained why Adele killed Takeru's father. I just kind of felt like he just did it because it would be a cool reveal. But also it's kind of weird how Takeru just completely forgave Adele, even though he just found out he killed his father. I feel like the world building is cool, has some cool moments. So the structure of the episodes in this season aren't the greatest. The first arc has a time limit, which is pretty good because this arc is just about collecting the luminary icon, so it gives some stakes for an otherwise boring arc. But the fact that there's still a time limit after this, and that fact that the time limit goes throughout the entire rest of the season is kind of stupid, especially because Takeru got revived at the end of the last time limit, so it doesn't really matter. It's just assumed that he'll get revived at the end, even if he doesn't complete it. But I just didn't feel like it was necessary, considering he had all the icons at that point, and all he had to do was make another wish. But also the fact that after the first arc, most of the episodes are two-part Civilian of the Week stories, which they're still going on to this day in Kamen Rider, and basically, with the exception of a couple of seasons, they were in every single season since Double, but it just doesn't really work in this season. Whereas with a season like O's, where you can have the greed infect a Civilian of the Week and they can become the monster of the week, in this season it kind of just feels like the icons are just with a random person, and it doesn't really fit most of the time. Like, it's not like these people look up to the icons are just with them for some reason. And I just thought like this entire part of like Takeru having to grow closer to the icons was just drawn out for way too long. It was drawn out for the entire rest of the season. But also, like, all the interesting stuff with the Gamma happened after the first arc. But that was pretty few and far between. So I just felt like the two-part structure and Civilian of the Week just didn't really fit this season that much. So I'm going to talk about the movies, and I usually don't talk about them because they're usually not important, but the movies from the season are pretty good. They add a lot to the world building, especially the last two. So the first movie, Movie War Genesis, is definitely the worst. I was just really disappointed by it because I really like Drive. It has probably my favorite characters and is my second favorite season, but it's mostly just about Ghost, and the Drive characters are kind of just there. So it was just really unfortunate, especially because this finally broke up the movie war tradition of having two separate stories, which were always kind of stupid. But I would much rather have had two separate stories for this, because at least there would be a story for Drive other than just having the Drive characters there for a story that was pretty much exclusively centered around the Ghost characters. And then the next one was Kamen Rider Ichigo, which was fine. I don't really have any connection to the first Kamen Rider, so I don't really care about this movie that much, although we'll say the new suit for Kamen Rider Ichigo is really cool. But other than that, it's just an alright movie. It's not that great, but it's not terrible. It's not as bad as Movie War Genesis. And then the summer movie is really good. It's probably one of my favorite Kamen Rider summer movies. You get to see the luminaries as actual people, which is cool, but also there's some things with Makoto's dad, which is interesting. And just there's some really cool final fight, and also some revelation with Takeru's body, but I don't think that's canon, so it doesn't really matter. But it's a great movie. It's one of my favorite summer movies. And then Ghost Rebirth, Kamen Rider Spectre is one of the best Kamen Rider movies, period. Probably only besides like O's 10 Years Later or Ryuki episode final, just because it makes Makoto an incredible character. It explains the stuff about the clone. I'm not gonna spoil it at all, but it just makes Makoto the best character in the entire season, and it's just an incredible movie. So if you're gonna watch any Kamen Rider movie, right after watching Kamen Rider Ghost, you should watch Ghost Rebirth Kamen Rider Spectre. It's that good. Now I'm going to talk about the aesthetics, which I didn't really care for the first time I saw this season, but now I think they're some of the best. Kamen Rider Ghost's base suit is incredible. Pretty much all of his upgrades, Tokon Boost, Grateful Damashi, and especially Mugen Damashi, which is probably my favorite suit, tied with Geats 9. I didn't really like the sweatshirt thing at first, but now I think it looks really cool. Spectre's suit is awesome, especially his power-up in the movie. That gives him like a Mugen Damashi type buffer Spectre. Necrom is pretty bad. It looks really cheap, and it just looks kind of weird. But the music in this season is incredible. It's all instrumental except for the opening theme, which is my favorite opening theme in Kamen Rider or Super Sentai. Just the aesthetics as a whole in the season is incredible. So in conclusion, Ghost is not a bad season, but it's not good either. It's just painfully average. The world building has good ideas, but it's not executed the greatest. The characters are just alright, although if you include the movies, there's at least one great character with Makoto. The movies are a mixed bag, but the summer movie and Ghost Rebirth basically shoot them off the stratosphere as some of the best collection of movies. The villains aren't that good, but it's kind of hard to find good villains in Tokusatsu. The season just has a specific charm to it that I can't really quantify. It's definitely doesn't deserve to be considered the worst. It's way, way better than Gotchard. Like, comparing the season to Gotchard, it's not even a competition. So I would say try this season out. It's still entertaining, it's a little bit boring, but I think it's worth it in the end. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the video. I should be back to publishing videos at a more consistent pace now that I'm not as busy. I'm thinking at least one video every 2 weeks, but I might be inclined to make a video once every week if I'm feeling up to it, but definitely once every 2 weeks. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been watching my videos while I've been away. My videos have still been getting a pretty consistent stream of views, so thank you. And I'm rewatching Fies right now, so I'm probably going to do a video like this on Fies, because I think it's also a season that isn't thought of as that good, but it's pretty good. And I also have a really big video planned, but I have no concrete timetable on when that's going to come out. I'm hoping by the end of the summer, but if it doesn't, then it is what it is. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Feedback is always appreciated. Have a great day.